možné pěstovat zemědělské plodiny a zároveň zlepšovat kvalitu půdy? Může být zemědělská produkce různorodá, ekonomicky životaschopná a přitom ještě podporovat biodiverzitu? Nejen nad tím se zamyslíme spolu se zemědělci, vědci a s dalšími experty z Česka i ze zahraničí. Audiosérii vás provede Lenka Ernbergerová z Českého spolku pro agrolesnictví.
Hello, I'm Stephen Briggs. I'm a farmer from the UK, and we farm at Whitehall Farm in Cambridgeshire in the eastern part of England.
Hello, today I have Stephen Briggs from United Kingdom, who is the agro-forestry farmer. So, hello, Stephen.
Hi, Lenka. It's a real pleasure to be here in Brunei.
Thank you for being with us. So you are an agroforestry farmer and also a promoter of agroforestry. Could you tell us how you got involved with an agroforestry farm and how it all started?
Well, that's a long question. As with many things, it's never one thing that makes you change the way you farm. So I was very fortunate that I trained as a soil scientist many years ago, and I ended up working a lot in East and Southern Africa with small farmers, and it was there that I became aware of agroforestry practices in Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda. And working with those farmers was, I guess, very informative in terms of my thinking around how land can be managed for stacking many enterprises together on the same parcel of land. Move forward many years, and I run a number of businesses in the United Kingdom, one of which is an advisory business working with regen and organic farmers, and in 2005 we started farming, and I farm a mixture of land that I own and also some land that we rent as well on a long-term arrangement, which was initially for 15 years, and then this was extended further afterwards. So the reason for adopting agroforestry is when we took some of the rented land on to farm. The land had been farmed with wheat and oilseeds and sugar beets and potatoes, and the soils were very degraded. And we have a mixture of light soils and heavy soils, and the light soils were subject to significant wind erosion. And this, as someone that trained in soil science, this was unacceptable. So I wanted to find a solution to addressing the problems of soil degradation from wind erosion. And I thought about many options. But in the back, somewhere, in a small part of my mind, in the very back of my head, was this memory of agroforestry in East Africa. And I wondered, would that be possible to do, not in a temperate context, but in a temperate environment? And I started doing research and talking to other farmers throughout Europe. I was very fortunate to get a scholarship study to travel and look at agroforestry in Australia, in America, all throughout Europe, and also in China. Spent a lot of time in China, and forming those ideas, I came back to the farm and said, right, let's put some agroforestry in. So we put 50% of the farm into agroforestry in 2007. So that's 52 hectares of agroforestry that we planted in 2007. And there were some challenges because the land is rented. So where the agroforestry is located, I'm not the landowner. I'd rent the land on a 15-year arrangement. And so I had to have discussions with the owner and convince them that this was something that was sensible. and their main considerations were that we would destroy the drainage lines in the field with the roots of the trees. So this was a consideration, and also that if I decided to not rent the farm and leave, that they would have a farm that they couldn't rent as a cropping farm anymore. So there was some negotiation to be had. The drainage problem, we chose smaller trees, and also I found some really good research from Canada which showed that actually with the right trees the drainage isn't a problem, provided you maintain the drains with maintenance. And I had to negotiate with the landowner that if I did leave, that I would remove the trees and return it to agricultural land. So this was a risk, but I was convinced that we could make it work. So that's how it all started. We wanted to initially stop the soil erosion, but I wanted to have a system with a perennial windbreak that also made me money. The farm has also been managed as an organic farm since 2007, so no herbicides, pesticides, artificial fertilizers. So we wanted to build more resilience to climate shocks, and also increase the level of biodiversity across the farm, as well as actually having a more diverse enterprise mix. So it's like having many parts of a jigsaw that you have to fit together while wearing a blindfold. So we decided that we would develop an agro-forestry system, and we chose to plant apple trees. And the reason we chose to plant apple trees versus a timber tree was because we wanted an economic return in the near future from the fruit. We couldn't wait 40 years for a tree because we didn't have the security within the rental agreement. Also with the fruit trees, we could add value by selling fruits and juices, and it gave us that more biodiverse mixture of cropping on the farm as well. So that was how we got into agroforestry. I think also it's a recognition that there's always been trees in the environment, and we need to work out how we can make those economically viable within a farming system. And the moment that most sticks in my mind is that as a farmer, our job is to harvest sunlight and mix it with carbon dioxide and water. If the sun stops shining, the game is finished for everybody. And it occurred to me that as a farmer that grows predominantly cereals, wheat, barley, oats, and some protein pulse crops, that there are periods of the year when the crops they change from being green and photosynthesizing to being a golden brown colour, and they've stopped photosynthesizing. So how, at the time of the year when there's maximum solar radiation, we're not photosynthesizing, so we've got no energy coming into the system. If I can use trees and combine them together with crops, I'm doing two things. I'm keeping the solar panels, the photosynthesis, turned on all year. And secondly, this is the clever bit, my landowner charges me a rent on a per hectare basis. But it's free if I go vertical up in the sky and vertical down in the soil. So I can make the farm bigger by being a three-dimensional farmer. So these were the concepts that I wanted to develop into the agroforestry.
Okay, so you already described us a little bit your farmer, that you have some apple trees, but maybe if you can explain us
More detail.
all detail, what are you growing.
So the farm, as I mentioned before, we took the farm over in sort of 2005. It had been heavily involved in conventional production with fertilizers and agrochemicals, growing potatoes and sugar beets, and wheat and other crops. And the soils were very tight. The rented farm is 105 hectares, and then we have another 30 hectares that we own as well. So we're farming about 130 hectares. And I'm a first generation farmer, so I'm not from a family of farmers. We decided to go farming. So when we moved onto the farm, it was a naked farm. Some buildings that were empty and no machinery. So we started to go farming, and we converted it to organic production on day one, and then 18 months later started planting fruit trees. The structure of the farm over the last 15 years has changed. We've had, at one point we were growing 40 hectares of vegetables and broccoli and cauliflower and onions, and some years this was good, and other years contracts with the supermarkets nearly bankrupted the business, so it was challenging. We've grown a lot of crops for seed over the years, but now we have quite a simple system. We grow some wheat and some oats for organic, and we're one of the few farms that is certified as a gluten-free farm in the UK. So we produce for a very special market to add value. We combine that with the fruit trees to produce apples, and then we also have about 10% of the farm for biodiversity, which was as part of the Common Agricultural Policy Pillar 2 environmental programs, rewarded for those activities. Now in the UK, obviously with Brexit, we have different programs that maybe don't reward us quite as strongly as in the CAP, but they're different. So the system for agro-forestry now is based upon 52 hectares, growing a silver arable system, alley cropping system, where we have single lines of apple trees, which are 3 meters between each tree in the row, and then a 3 meter strip underneath the trees, which has been sown to flowers, legumes, for pollinating species, because we also have a bee enterprise for honey. And then in between the rows of trees, we have 24 meters for alley cropping of cereals. Our biggest field is 13 hectares. Our smallest field is 4 hectares, and we have a range of fields. All the tree rows were planted and established in a north-south direction, so that the sun comes up in the east and down in the west, so there's no shading either side. The trees were planted with 13 varieties of apples, 50% heritage varieties and 50% of modern varieties. I was a tree novice, a complete, you might say a tree virgin. I had no knowledge of trees, so I took advice from many nursery growers and from some forestry people to select the varieties. We planted the trees in 2007, so there were 4,500 trees. And if you add up, if you calculate just the 3 meter strips with the trees in, the density is about 1,100 trees per hectare. But because we have arable crops growing beside and in between the trees, the overall density of the trees over the entire landscape of the 52 hectares is only 85 trees per hectare. So it's very low. It doesn't look like forestry. It looks like having hedges. When we planted it, it looked like having sticks in the field. So the trees were planted, in 2007, 2-year-old fruit trees, 4,500 trees, 13 varieties. Each row in the field, it tends to be one variety for picking. We selected late maturing varieties so that we could autumn sown cereals in October, November, and our spring sown cereals in March, April, and then harvest those in August, and then harvest the fruits from the trees in September, October, and then start again the process of tilling and sowing our winter crops again. And then in the winter we could do the pruning of the trees, so there was a nice overlap in terms of timing for labour and access and management. Having a tree which needed maintenance or harvesting of something in July or August wasn't going to work because there was a cereal crop in the way.
Okay.
So that's how we set it up. When we planted, each tree had a 60 millimeter post and a mesh guard around the tree, because we have big rabbits, hares. I don't know what the Czech word for hares are. Ones with the long ears.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We had to protect the trees, and also we put a 1 meter square a mat under the tree to protect for weed competition.
And you don't have deers.
Well, initially we didn't have deers, but now we have some deers present, but they're not a big problem.
Okay.
The biggest problem to start in the first 2 years was we hadn't expected that we were creating 4,500 places for pigeons to come and roost in the field. And when they landed on a very young tree, one pigeon was okay. When you had the second pigeon, it broke the top of the tree. Maybe 1,000 trees damaged.
1,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we solved the problem by returning to each tree and putting a 3 meter bamboo cane, and then the pigeons would land on top of the bamboo cane. Okay. So there were some mistakes. The mat for weed control worked really well, but now 17 years on, it's a lovely place for mice to sit under the mat because it's dry and warm in the winter, and they eat the base of some of the trees. So we've lost some trees from mice.
So you don't use it anymore? Or
No. So we remove them now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that explains the maybe the structure of how we established the agroforestry north-south, the 24 metre alley, and we decided on 24 metres because our machinery is 3 metres, 4 metres, 6 metres, 12 metres, 24 metres.
Okay.
Now we've rationalised all our machinery on the farm, so everything we do is 6 metres. So we now have developed a controlled traffic farming system, so that in each alley between the rows of trees there is 4 movements, 4 passes for cultivating, for sowing, for mechanical weeding, and for harvesting. So that gives us a real benefit in terms of being able to adapt our machinery to the system.
Okay. Take a look at FIFA.
Coffee's always good,
Don't
yeah.
be cold. It's strange, but
Yeah.
you like it.
Yeah, it's good. It's-
So now, could you tell us a bit about your business model? How do you commercialize your products?
So we're now really growing 2 main products on the farm. No, 3 main products. No, 4 main products. No, 5 main products. Because there's a range of products we've stacked together. The cereals, the wheat we grow, is sold to a mill for making bread. The oats that we grow, so the combinable crops, are sold directly to a gluten-free mill, which is only 20 kilometres from our farm, and it's another farmer that I went to university with. So we've created a grower cooperative to supply gluten-free oats to this farm for the specialty brand. Then we take the grains into at harvest, because the farm's organic, there is some weed seeds in the crop. We clean the weed seeds, we dry the weed seeds, we put some of the crop, the oats and the wheat, back into the grain, and we package it in 1 kilo packets, and we sell them for €1.20 a kilo as bird seed.
Okay.
So the bird seed,
Nice idea.
the bird seed, the weeds are really valuable. So that's another enterprise. Then between the trees, we're growing crops where we have the rows of trees. Underneath the trees, the species of flowers and legumes. We've entered this into a biodiversity program where we get about €600 per hectare for providing biodiversity strips and protecting watercourses, because all of our fields have water around them. I should have explained at the beginning perhaps that we're on a very flat landscape in Cambridgeshire, in the east of England. Most of our fields are 0.5 metres to 1 metre below sea level. So it's a flat, open landscape, and that's why the trees are really important. So that's the second enterprise, is the biodiversity payments. And then we have a bee enterprise where the honeybees are pollinating the apple trees, and the apples are feeding the pollen is feeding the bees and making honey. That's another enterprise. And then we have the apple varieties themselves, and about 90% of the apples are harvested and made into apple juice. And we don't make the juice ourselves. I send the apples to another farm that has a juicing machine, big juicing plant, and they do the pressing and the bottling, and then the bottles come back. And in 2018, we built a 40 metre by 40 metre building for a farm shop, and that has a restaurant and an education centre. So now we sell apple juice and fresh apples through the farm shop direct to the consumer. Because one of the things that we always try and do as the business model is to capture the value. If I sell any produce, whether it's wheat or oats or apples or vegetables, typically the farmer is only getting 10% of the value, and then somebody else in the food chain, the food processor or the distributor or the retailer, is taking the profit. So we try and be the processor and the retailer as well, selling it direct to the end consumer. So now we sell about 5,000 bottles of 750 milliliter apple juice every year. And so we can take fruits that are maybe worth €60 per kilo, and we can turn that into €4 per kilo by processing it into a juice. So adding value is really part of our business model as much as possible. So we have the oats, we have the biodiversity income, we have the fruit income, we have the organic and also the gluten-free income as well. We have the income from the weed seeds as bird seed. We have the income from the shop and the restaurant on the farm. So we have many things stacked together to try and produce income.
And I wanted to ask you, how many workers do you have? Because it seems like that it's really
Easy.
busy, and you need manual work for take the fruits, for prepare everything to sell.
So the farm on the farm there is me, and I'm not on the farm every day. I'm doing advisory work and other work. I work with one of my neighbours who does some of the work with tractors for us, and we employ some casual labour for pruning and also for picking. So at harvest time, I myself do all My neighbours help me with cultivations. I do all the sowing myself. I do all the harvesting myself, and then we bring a team of usually 6 or 8 people in to help harvesting the fruits in the autumn, and we can harvest all the fruits in 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
Right.
and then put them in big 300 kilo boxes, put them on a lorry, send them to the friend that with the juicing plant, and then they come back as bottles, and then it's good for 1 year, and that works quite well.
Yeah, good.
So there's very few people on the farm. In the farm shop, we have 14 people, 14 staff.
Okay.
So that's a different enterprise.
And your farm shop is on the farm?
It's on the farm, yeah. It's on the farm. So we have a small number of animals on the farm. They're not commercial. We have some sheep, some goats, some alpacas, some chickens, some ducks, some rabbits, and these are for people to come and learn about the farm. And then we have a building where we have a farmers market every month. So other farmers bring their produce, they sell it, they drink coffee in our shop, and I think what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to make the farm part of the community, and we're trying to get people to come and spend money. Yeah, if they spend €5 on a cup of coffee, it's fine. Maybe they buy some apple juice, maybe they buy some vegetables.
Oh, I will not
So
do this type of farm.
Yeah, the business model is add value and get on my farm, not get off my farm.
Yeah, it's very important, I think. So for you, what are the main advantages or disadvantages that agroforestry brings you?
It's a great question. So the advantages and one of the things that we did right at the beginning before we planted the trees, we engaged with universities to do benchmark studies on birds, invertebrates, soil quality, water quality, butterflies, species richness, to create a benchmark in biodiversity indicators. And all the time we've been working with researchers. So currently I have 5 PhDs doing activities on the farm. We're not a research farm, but now we have nearly half the farm with agro-forestry and the other half of the farm growing organic arable crops. So we have a really good comparison. So the researchers like to be able to look at that. So we know from that research activity that the benefits of borders a big increase in biodiversity. We have a 400% increase in bumblebees. We have many endangered bird species. We have improved soil quality with better mycorrhizae. We've moved the soil from being bacterial dominated to fungal dominated. Much better soil functionality, better drainage, better infiltration. We have an increase in abundance and species number and distribution of invertebrates and insects. So the biodiversity index has gone up significantly. I think they said it's a 10 times increase in biodiversity. So it's delivering on biodiversity. We can add value from the produce. It's stopping the soil erosion, but it does make life more complicated. It means there are more parts of the jigsaw. So from a management perspective, it's more management complex. It's not a simple system. So it's managed complexity. And I guess the other disadvantage is you have to work within the constraints of the agricultural policy. When we started the program and we put the agroforestry in, it was difficult to find how to put it into the subsidy program and the compliance structures for the CAP. But we managed to do this. Fast forward 18 years, and I've been helping our government in the UK post-Brexit develop agroforestry policies, and we now have, as of last week, We have now financial support for new establishment of agroforestry and also ongoing management payments to reward for the biodiversity and resource protection elements of agroforestry. So that's great. So there are challenges and there are benefits. What we haven't managed to do yet is gain any income from carbon sources. We know we're generating about 2.6 tons of carbon per hectare per year from the tree growth, but we haven't been able to capitalise or monetise any income from that yet. But I'm hopeful we will be able to do that in the future.
Okay, and the last question. What advice would you give to Czech farmers? What should they avoid and what should they try?
Okay, so the first thing I would say, if you're going to plant trees and make them part of your farming system, you need to define what your objectives are. Is it biodiversity? Is it stopping erosion of soil and improving soil quality? Is it economic? What do you need to achieve? And the second question is, by when? Do you need a return on the investment that you make in the trees within 5 years or 50 years? Because these questions will help you decide what kind of system. It might be shade and shelter for animals or nutrition for animals. It might be to increase the number of bumblebees or birds on the farm. It might be, I need more income. So setting up these questions is really important, and that will help define the system. The second bit of advice I would give is think about what markets you're going to try and sell into and how you're going to do that. Don't expect to grow a tree like any other crop and expect there to be a market in 5 or 10 years' time. Think about how you're going to market, where you're going to market, and the route to that market. Is it going to be something that you're going to sell as a wholesale, direct in volume, in which case engage with buyers before you plant, make sure you plant what they want. And I think increasingly there will be buyers of agricultural commodities and tree commodities where they're looking to find a place for their carbon footprint. Maybe there's an opportunity there to do a timber or a fruit or a nut or a resin product with agroforestry and also a carbon product for the people you're selling to. Or if you're going to sell direct to consumers, then you need to work out whether this is going to be opening a shop in the middle of Brno or Prague, or whether it's going to be getting people to come to the farm and sell from the farm. You need to work out your market. So that's the second thing. First thing is what and when. Second thing is how I'm going to sell what I'm producing. And the third thing is connect with and surround yourself with people that have already done agroforestry and learn from their mistakes. Because most are very willing to share their experiences. Connecting to the European Agroforestry Federation and the Czech Agroforestry Association, really important. There's lots of experience and advice and research that you can learn from. Other people's mistakes are the best thing to learn from. And I every day is a school day. You're always learning something, and that would be my third bit of advice.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that our farmers now will establish a lot of agroforestry systems.
Well, I think going forward, with climate change, we've got to think about how we adapt our farming and land use to be more resilient.
Yeah.
And agroforestry is one option to help on that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.